Welcome, everyone, to the next What's Next podcast. Today, I'm especially excited. I have a very special guest. I have Tejas Totade, who's from Fin, actually, and is our CTO and head of AI. And you might wonder, does an agency have a CTO and head of AI? Well, Tejas brings something very special to Fin. He's a developer, which we all know is so critical in today's world, which is what makes AI work. He's an engineer, so he really understands what's under the hood and what's going on. And he has a deep connection with the ecosystem of everything that's happening, these emerging tools that we're all looking for and experimenting with and piloting. And he's been critical to really helping totally transform Fin in terms of our culture, in terms of the tools we use, the way we think, the program we create. So I want to first of all thank you so much for joining me today, Tejas. Um,
Thank you,
and
Kathy.
just ask you, first of all, when we first started talking about this, and you had the idea to create a tech lab, and then afterwards a tech accelerator, what was on your mind? Because this didn't exist in the agency world. So what were you thinking, and what was your vision of what you were trying to create?
Oh, I think if I can indulge, I might want to go a little bit even behind in terms of time. So when I first started working, this is I'm not native to the communications and marketing industry, as you know, as you mentioned. My the start of my career was really in IT consulting and like pure play tech. When I came over to this industry, I saw a tremendous need to kind of up level the industry as a whole from a technological standpoint. And I saw tremendous potential in terms of how comms technologies, where they were back in, say, 2010 to where they are right now. And that kind of was my motivation and mission behind all of this is how do I kind of help this industry? Like I could either be a tiny cog in a very, very big hole, a big wheel of pure play tech and IT consulting, or I could really kind of forge my own path and help the industry and our organization and our colleagues succeed through the adoption of emerging technologies and really kind of forge a new path for our agency as a whole. That was the motivation, and thankfully, you have always been such a great champion of technology, and your vision fortunately aligned with my vision of having us be always tech forward. And so I would say the rest is history at that point, and we've just been kind of like leading the path, going from creating industry first to agency first, and even first on the client side, if I can remember, with a lot of our clients who we have done these emerging tool activations with. So that's kind of like in a nutshell my motivation and why I was thinking. It was a very big surprise for my parents when I decided to kind of go into an industry which no one in my family, like most of the people in my family, are either engineers or doctors. As you can imagine, I'm Indian, and so in order to kind of like showcase my talent in a different industry, it was a big challenge for me, but also I saw it as a great opportunity.
You mentioned, since we are taking the opportunity to look backwards a little bit, I remember that one of the first things you did was the Alexa voice. And that at the time, we were the first agency to do that. I know you have a special relationship with so many of the tech companies and with Alexa equally. So, how did that come to your mind? How did that happen? And, you can imagine our faces when we first started introducing this.
Yeah, so it really, I would say that I was back in grad school when the mobile revolution really came, and I always thought that, oh boy, if only I was, in a commercial industry back then, I could have really kind of tapped in to the mobile revolution and be like the first to have the first app on the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store. We did end up building apps after I joined
Mhm.
Rudafin, but I still felt like a lot of it had already been done. And so I always wanted to do something from ground zero. And when Alexa came about, and this was back in 2014, I think, and they had this canister, which was the old Alexa, the Amazon Echo. And I remember looking at it and I was like, this is going to be like a tremendous comms tool in the future because you can have distributed communications, and you can kind of deliver it through an app like medium. And that's when Amazon, to credit to them, they were really proactive in their outreach. And so when I reached out and I said that, oh, I'm so and so, I'm a developer who's working at an agency, and we're really interested in, they were super excited to partner with us, and they kind of like welcomed us into the developer program. We became one of the first, I would say probably the first Amazon preferred Alexa agencies. And then we created a skill for you, Kathy, which is Kathy's Thoughts, which was amazing because again, you've kind of been my guinea pig for so many things, and you always say yes to these things, which is amazing. And so we created the skill for you, which allowed you to kind of have your thoughts be sent out periodically. And it kind of was a proof of concept. And that led to activations with a number of our Fortune 50 clients, which at that time needed a proof of concept. And us having built that skill, which I remember got a lot of media attention in PR trades, just helped us sell in that idea and build out that concept further. So my whole philosophy behind it was like, how can we get on the ground zero? Because that gives us the most freedom to innovate and do things which no one has done before.
So, on that spirit, I know you've been meeting with Fortune 50 companies to just show them the tools, help them kind of understand what we have available today, what they should be thinking about, how they should be bringing it into their organizations, how they can be training their teams. So, having really met with so many different companies and so many different industries, what are you seeing in terms of the corporate world's reactions? Like, are they beginning? I know we started doing this maybe a year or two ago. Um, are things picking up? Are people, embracing and implementing tools much more rapidly than before? What's happening in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think we are definitely seeing a lot of momentum in the direction of adoption. I think people are going a little like there are a lot of clients who are going beyond adoption and are now looking at ROI. Because I think adoption, I would say, was 2022 to 2024 was kind of like the peak, like, oh, here's a new tool, let's find out a way to use it. Now I think it's more than let's find out a way to use it, but also um, what can we get from it? Is it going to help
Mhm.
drive organizational efficiency? Is it going to increase my sales? Is it going to get me additional leads? I think all of those questions are becoming part of the discovery process. So anytime we kind of see it, and this is something which we do internally as well, as anytime we find a new tool, we see, is this going to replace something I already have, or is this going to do something better? So that's kind of a key shift that we are seeing, because previously everyone just was excited to try new things out, and now I think people are kind of reaching that. If you look at the Gartner's hype cycle of emerging technologies, we are kind of getting to that peak of inflated expectations, and now we want to
Mhm.
see somewhat the slope of enlightenment, or the productivity. I don't remember the final the final phase, but we want to get to that productivity phase faster and want to shortcut it a little bit, because otherwise it's just going to be one tool after another without having a clear purpose for why and what ROI it generates.
Yeah, so that has actually changed the way we think also for communications because, in prior years before our AI tools became so, sort of so central to everything we do, we would be looking for awareness, reputation, impressions, things like that. And now, as you rightly point out, we've shifted the way we're thinking to really looking at what's the impact on the business, what's the ROI that we can measure, what kind of KPIs can we actually put in place, and using a whole array of tools and measurement KPIs that really bring in lots of different competencies from influencers to social to paid to earned, and also just really thinking about how we can be modeling some of the sort of the audiences and audience insights that we're trying to actually speak to, even on our weekly management meetings, where you're showing us like how we can look at really dissecting and looking at a problem with really clear prompts. So I think it's changing our field, certainly changing the way Reuter Finn works. So what do you think is really coming next? Like, what is it that's going to be the on the horizon? I know last night you have been talking to our teams about agentic AI. And, how is that going to play a role?
Yeah, so I definitely think this is the year of agentic AI, where I would say like I mean it's been around since realistically since like late last year, like H2 of last year was when mainstream conversations started taking place. But now this year, you're actually seeing the implementations manifest themselves in mainstream tools. So the tool which you were talking about yesterday was Perplexity Computer, and it's again it's multi-agent. It's something which allows you to orchestrate across different agents, and just the quality of outputs that it's generating is far superior than what we have seen ever before. So I would say like there's going to be more and more focus on agentic this year, and because we think that that's probably where a lot of the organizations are going to derive the ROI. So
Hmm.
the base case for ROI is that eventually you have you have like an employee who ideally is surrounded by a bunch of AI coworkers, and all of these
Hmm.
coworkers are going to be your agents, and every employee essentially will have this set up because you'll be able to drive a lot more productivity from it, and also be able to reduce a lot of the time for operational things like doing research, preparing files, or preparing reports, just like doing a lot of like activities which require you to go from one place to another. A lot of that could be delegated to these agents and can happen asynchronously while you're focusing on, like your interaction with your client, or you're kind of helping the client manage a particular crisis, or you need to kind of physically kind of look into something which
Hmm.
would otherwise have taken time away because you would have to do all of these things which agentic AI can now do. So that's the promise of something like a Perplexity Computer, or a Claude Cowork, or or OpenAI Frontier. So all of these agentic frameworks are coming to the enterprise layer and are becoming more and more dominant in terms of how they can drive productivity. We obviously know all about OpenClaw, and all of the both the hype and the actual use cases, which are probably going to become more and more mature as we go through, and as other organizations kind of start contributing to OpenClaw as well. So it really is the year of agentic AI as I see it. There's also a nod to physical AI. I think physical AI is something which we are seeing manifest in different ways. Everything from like humanoid robots who I'm really looking forward to, who can do my laundry for a certain fixed price a month, to having those type of capabilities which you can find in transportation, in general, public and private sector. So those two, I would say, agentic AI and physical AI, probably in that order of
Hmm.
activation and maturity, is probably what we're going to see more of this year.
So what you're talking about, to be really honest, requires two things: training, and it requires cultural change, for people to be really thinking in a different manner and to be comfortable with the tools. So how are, how can we continue, because these tools and the change is so rapid that it's not as if you can, it's not one and done. You come to the end point, you learn the tool, and that's, really, say, mastering the, what you need to know. So what does the tech lab bring, and how are we pushing it into the organization with our training programs, and now our tech accelerator, which is helping really understand what tools need to be developed?
Yeah, so I think we have it's like peeling layers of an onion, right? I think at the highest level you have the tech lab, which is essentially our in-house incubator of emerging technologies, which, as you said, we are always kind of looking for who is the next startup that is going to
Mhm.
make it big, or which is the next tool that is going to help augment our programming. Um, that knowledge kind of trickles downwards through the organization. And at the next level, we have the accelerator. The whole goal of it is to kind of, once we have these tools identified, how do we kind of operationalize them within the organization to drive productivity? Again, all of this centers around ROI, and how we kind of get these tools to now solve the business problems that are there, both from an operational standpoint as well as from a client standpoint. That becomes really important because without this middle tier, there is a disconnect between what happens at the top and what happens at the bottom. I think that's a key issue which a lot of organizations are facing. We see this in public facing research, which shows that the C suite is a lot more educated about AI as compared to the junior folks in an organization. That leads to shadow AI, bring your own AI, all kinds of problems because the two layers don't really talk to each other as much as they should. So our salt for that is really to have an accelerator group which is going to make sure that the knowledge from the top is translated and made operational for everyone within the organization so they feel comfortable using these tools, and it almost kind of serves as a product supply chain for our organization. Then we also want to get to the grassroots level. So we have a program known as AI Enthusiasts, which is essentially, you can think of it as AI explorers, those who are, I would say, primarily from the comms and marketing discipline, who have had limited exposure in the past, but are really passionate about learning new things and adopting these technologies. We want to empower them, we want to champion them. And so this group, again, we meet on a bi-monthly basis and we exchange ideas. It kind of goes from everything from like, hey, I have this idea to create a custom GPT, which is going to help me analyze the earnings for my client. It goes from something as simple as that to something which is like, oh, I'm looking to build this particular workflow. How can I kind of go about it? So think of it as office hours meets new ideas. And that's basically, so we have a very solid three-tier structure at this point, which really helps drive that change management as well as keeps the spirit of exploration alive.
That is really fabulous. And I must say, it's an incredible time to be really helping companies like see their way through this. You've identified all the opportunities and also some of the challenges. And it's great that we're meeting with so many different companies, both clients and non-clients, really to help them navigate, what's their best course forward. And just very exciting to work together with you, Tejas, because we are changing the world, and we do it very optimistically. We're both increasing productivity, but increasing our human creativity and our ability to actually be bring the best and really excel at what we're doing in our field. So I just want to say how important that everything that you're doing is, and we're so grateful for the exciting work that we're doing at Ruderfin and driven and underpinned by our AI tools.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I feel like a lot of the work, even though AI obviously is playing a big part, we haven't sacrificed the human creativity. I think, if anything, it has only been
Hmm.
turbocharged because now a lot of the
Yep.
creatives can do so much more, and you can go through multiple iterations of storyboarding, can go through multiple iterations of, any kind of activity that you previously would require a lot more manual intervention. I think it
Hmm.
has been turbocharged by it. But I think that human element is still so super important, and one which I think both you and I, we emphasize it every time we speak about AI, that this is not a replacement for human creativity and human ingenuity, because that is still going to be paramount, not just in our industry, but in every industry, really.
Hmm. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. It's very motivating and inspiring, and look forward to connecting for our next part of the series.